Good evening, everyone. Hope you all guys are having a great weekend. So, greetings from ICRD India Analytics. Hope you all are safe and sound. So, welcome to our expert session with Mr. Adarsh Ramanujan. We would love to host you on behalf of CIIT and TDPC. Our team is enthusiastic to organize this webinar on non-fungible token, nothing but NFT and intellectual property and its unique challenges. So we welcome Adarsh Ramanujan, sir. So before we start this session, let me just give you a brief introduction about sir. So Adarsh Ramanujan, sir, is an attorney that has assisted many clientees in a wide range of sectors. With a degree in science and being qualified patent agent, Adarsh started his practice with a focus of intellectual property, while his practice has now grown to cover diverse areas of law. Intellectual property remains to be his first love. He has experience in handling a variety of intellectual property disputes, FTOs, patentability studies, open source consulting, data protection and privacy laws, drugs, cosmetics and medical devices regulations, biotechnology regulations, biodiversity and environmental laws. He has also handled domestic arbitrations and international disputes and regular litigations, uh, competition law matters, debt recovery, SAR, FASI, and IBC matters. He holds education in the background of LLM, University of California, Berkeley, USA, BSc LLB honors from National Law University, Jodhpur, India. He was a gold medalist during his BSc. He is also a part of the Bar Council Commission. He is also an advocate qualified to practice law in the state of California, United States of America. He is a registered patent agent in India. He's also been an author for the book of Patent Law, Case and Materials, a synthesis for India, published by Walter Schooler, expected to launch in the year 2020. So he also created segments in automobile engineering, electrical engineering, telecom, energy and renewable energy, textile, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, biotech, cosmetics, industrial chemicals, and agrochemicals. So we welcome Adarsh Ramanujan sir to cater this session on non-fungible tokens and intellectual properties unique challenges. Welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here. And thank you for the introduction. Are we starting or?
Yes, sir. We can start the session now.
Okay. Can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, sir. I can see your screen.
Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. It's crystal clear. We can start the session.
Okay. Thank you. So good evening to everyone, and thank you for taking the time over the weekend, and hope we have a productive session. So on this occasion, I'm talking about NFTs and IP, non-fungible tokens and intellectual property. It is, of course, a topic that everybody has been talking about for the past year, probably more. Big news was made when paintings and digital art was being sold for more than $1 million, and people making tons of money when it comes to the sale and transactions of NFTs. NFTs, to be candid, have a number of issues that need to be settled from a legal angle, not just IP. You have issues in the regulatory side also, particularly in a country like India, where cryptocurrency and digital assets are facing some unique challenges on the regulatory phase. And now we also have the tax implication now with the new Finance Act, as announced in the budget session, having an additional 30% tax for income from digital assets. So there are some very type of unique challenges when it comes to NFTs. But today my task is to share my views and thoughts as far as the IP issues are concerned. I have raised a question in the topic, which is whether is it really creating a unique set of challenges, or is it creating challenges that advocates and people familiar in the area of IP law have seen in the past. So is it just old wine in a new bottle? That is the same type of challenges, but the platform has now changed. Or are we really having, or are we really being presented with challenges that we've never seen before? Now, I have divided this into 4 separate parts. It is to understand IP challenges here, we need to understand NFTs, how they are created, and the backbone of NFTs, which is your blockchain technology. As much as I'm technically qualified, the purpose of this talk or the presentation is to create a rather rudimentary way of explaining NFTs and the blockchain. I'm not an expert on blockchain technology. Perhaps someone in the audience is an expert. So if you think I'm going wrong anywhere, or if the oversimplification is creating some kind of an error, do feel free to interrupt and change that. All right. So what are NFTs? Now imagine in the real world, you're buying a property, which is this house that you see on the left-hand side of the slide. So the house exists in the real world. There is an address to it. You can go to the particular survey number, and then you'll see that building. So that is the asset, as we would call it in law, or property as you would normally see it. If I want to acquire the property, I go to the existing owner, I negotiate the price, and I enter into a sale deed or a deed of sale, which is the second thing that you see as an image here. Now, technically, this document exists independent of the asset, in the sense they are 2 separate things in normal English sense. But this document identifies the owner of the asset, right? So if you have a deed of sale which says this property is now sold to you for X amount of price by the previous owner, this document is evidence or proof that you have acquired the underlying asset, which is that building or land or property. But you don't stop there. Under Indian law, as is typically the case in almost every jurisdiction of this world, every real estate transaction, you will go register that transaction with a central repository. Now, just as an example, I've put one image of the TN registration department, Tamil Nadu registration department. For every state in the country, you have a separate registration department. And at the central level, you have the Registration Act 1908, which is implemented by all of the states. Now, that will mandate, when you read it with Transfer of Property Act, that every time anybody acquires title over a property, real estate, you are bound to go to the registration department and register the fact. So what you now have are effectively three separate items. You have your asset on the one hand, then you have your document which evidences or proves that you own the asset, and three, you have a ledger or a repository like the registration department, which is recording the fact that you are the owner of that property. So there is the asset, there is the evidence of ownership, and there is the authentication or recording of that ownership. Three separate things, right? Your asset, your document identifying ownership, and the authenticated record for recording this ownership. Three separate items. The most important thing that you have to remember is your NFTs, if at all you're drawing an analogy, all analogies always have an error. That is why they're analogies. If at all you're drawing an analogy, your NFT fall in the middle category, which is to say it is something that is identifying ownership of an underlying asset. So they identify ownership of an underlying asset. The NFT itself is not the asset. It is a very important distinction to be made. The document itself, for example, is not the property. The document simply evidences your ownership of the property. Similarly, the NFT is simply identifying ownership of an underlying asset. Now, the underlying asset, in theory, as far as NFTs are concerned, could be digital, could be non-digital. The technology itself does not present any specific limitation as to what the underlying asset can or cannot be. But in principle, you will usually see, or at least have seen, most NFTs in the digital space. Although there are now talks of how this technology can be used even for non-digital asset. We don't need to get into that for the moment, but just recognize that as a fundamental feature of the tech or a legal regulatory system, because currently we practically don't have much in that space, there is no such restriction that the underlying asset needs to be digital or non-digital. And the record keeping function is achieved on blockchain. So that's equivalent to your registration department, to go back to that loose analogy that we were using. But an important point you should realize here, and this is where really the from a legal point of view, the analogy with real property ends, is in real property, you have your Registration Act, you have your Transfer of Property Act. You do not have any such legislations as far as NFTs and underlying assets are concerned. Whether you like it or not, they are really entirely governed by contract law. So you go to an NFT marketplace today and you talk about minting an NFT. We'll just get to that now. You do that, click here to agree to the terms and conditions. That's it. Your rights over that NFT, your rights to that underlying asset, everything is related or determined by what you agree to what you agree in those terms and conditions. It's all contractual. And of course, as is typically the case, when it comes to all these click wrap agreements on websites and marketplaces, you don't get to negotiate the terms. It is what it is, right? There is one area, of course, you can tweak, and I'll get to that when we deal with how smart contracts are made for NFTs. But the key point to remember is it's all contractual, okay? The semantics of the term NFT is non-fungible plus token. in simple terms, fungibility is a property of any item. So it is if something is exchangeable for something of equal value. A normal example that people will give you is if I have 10 rupee note and it's got a value which is 10 rupees and it is exchangeable by something of equal value. So you can take one 10 rupee note with one particular serial number and I can give that to you, and in exchange you can give me another 10 rupee note with a different serial number. Although the two notes are different in that they have different serial numbers, they are still exchangeable because they have equal value. Or I can give you the 10 rupee note and you can exchange it with 10 different 1 rupee notes or 1 rupee coins. The idea is they are exchangeable of something of equal value. Non-fungible, on the other hand, is simply the opposite. It is unique in that it is not interchangeable with something of equal value. Now, there are many ways to look at it. A simple one which came to my mind is, so I'm a coin collector. So nowadays you don't get your 10 paisa, 20 paisa coins that we used to see as kids. And when our grandparents used to have the annas, 1 anna, 2 anna, 6 anna, etc. So I have all those coins collected. Today, the value is not if I take a 20 paisa coin, for a coin collector, the value is not 20 paisa because that transaction doesn't exist anymore. Perhaps it is in hundreds of rupees. I know of coin collectors who have coins that date back to 12th century, 13th century, which are worth millions and billions of dollars. So the intrinsic value is different. It's a simple example. It could be the simplest of things that you have. For example, your favorite professor has gifted you a fountain pen, back in high school. Yeah, it's a 20 rupees hero pen that you used to get those days. It could be 20 rupees normally, but let's say that professor is very special to you, or the professor ended up, getting a Nobel Prize or something. So the value of that fountain pen is not just 20 rupees. From your perspective, that value is very, very high. And if he ends up becoming a huge celebrity, the value of that pen, suppose autographed by him, will also have a huge value. So that pen is no longer exchangeable with another pen of 20 rupees because it has a different value. That's what makes it non-fungible. A token is simply a normal, you go to a ticket counter, you get a token for something. It is simply a representative of a representation of any item. So it's just that. A non-fungible token in the simplest term is simply a representation of an underlying asset. That is why the token comes. And it is non-fungible because it is unique in and of itself, because that underlying asset in consideration is said to be unique. So this is what NFTs basically are. Now, how do you create NFTs? Again, I'm sure there are tons and tons of, when I started researching NFTs about a year and a half, 2 years ago, even at that time, there were tons of videos and PDFs and blogs on how NFTs are created. Anybody can look at it at any point in time. I'm just giving you a simple version so that we have a base to discuss. The idea is tokenization. Let's take an artist. So the artist now sits and say makes a painting. Let's say in this case, it's a hand, could be anything. Then they do what is called as tokenization. This is all mostly an automated process. There are specific tokenization apps, or there are NFT marketplaces where you can do this tokenization. What do? Say you take a picture of that art, or maybe it's a digital art. You've done it directly on your computer. So you upload the artwork. You add your metadata. So who the author, when you did it, whatever are the properties or attributes you want to attach to that artwork. You save the project and then you click a button. It's all automated. The mint is created. It's minted, or the token is created. That's it. It's not that you physically get a token or anything. It's just a digital file. It's a token is just ultimately a bits and pieces of code. This is now recorded on the blockchain. And each token is unique. So for every artwork or every underlying asset, you can create a separate token. And there'll be digital data, which is unique to each of your artwork that you upload. Or you can create an entire portfolio like that. But the key point you have to remember is this token that you have created is the NFT, the token that you've created, is simply a separate digital piece of data, which is apart from your art. Why? Because when you do the tokenization and you upload your art itself, the main painting itself doesn't go into the blockchain. So whichever website you're using, etc., they might have a server or a storage area where the art is actually stored. That's a very key important point to remember. The art could be stored on any server, not the blockchain itself. That's how the distinction is also maintained, in fact, that the token is different from the underlying piece of art or the underlying piece of asset. Right? Simple. So the moment you do a tokenization, you have minted the NFT. It's a simple process. It's an automated process, barring the addition of artwork. As I said, the rest of the process is practically automated. Now, this is where another interesting point comes, though I've not mentioned it in this image infographic. When you do this tokenization, there is a smart contract that is attached to it. Again, we should be very careful. It can be misleading because as lawyers and as common men, sometimes you look at a contract and you think, oh, okay, it's one of those regular type of contracts. Frankly, it is not. Ultimately, it is simply a computer code that cross-references the token with the asset with the crypto wallet that you have. So obviously, we are dealing it, in digital assets and digital currency. So you've got a token that's assigned to an asset, and it's assigned to a digital wallet that you'll have for cryptocurrency. It's a code that cross-references all of this. All right, but it is contract in one way. Why? Because you can have self-executing instructions. So for example, let us say I have drawn that painting example in the previous slide that we saw. Now I want to tokenize this painting, create an NFT over that painting. And I want to say that every downstream sale, so let us say I put it up on a marketplace to sell this painting or sell the NFT. I have to watch myself. You don't sell the painting, you sell the NFT that represents the painting. When I sell the NFT, let us say I get 100 units of whatever cryptocurrency that I'm looking at. I can now create a system which will say that when that buyer one, let's call him buyer one or him or her buyer one, when buyer one sells this NFT further to say buyer two, and say buyer two sells it further to buyer three, and so on, the chain goes on, I can insert an instruction that in each such sale, 2% of what that buyer gets should be credited to me as a recurring royalty for every subsequent sale. So I sold it for 100 units to buyer one. Say buyer one wants to sell it to buyer two for 150. It's become a great NFT to own. So somebody is willing to pay a premium. So buyer two is buying from buyer one for 150 units of cryptocurrency. The smart contract can have an instruction which says that at the time of 150, that sale of 150 units, 2%, which is 30 units, or is it 30 units? 3 units should be credited to my account. Now, these are self-executing in the sense that I don't have to find out who the buyer two is. I don't have to write to him, please give me a bank transfer, nothing. I don't have to do all that. It is self-executing because as soon as that transaction happens between buyer one and buyer two, when the 150 units of cryptocurrency is being transferred from buyer two's account or digital wallet, 3 will automatically go to my digital wallet, and the remaining 147 will go to buyer one's digital wallet. Therefore, it is self-executing. So in that sense, for the people who are minting the NFT, it is a great and efficient way to impose these kind of conditions because it is simple to do so. I won't get into more details of smart contracts. There are known standards of how smart contracts are created because after all, they're just code. There are known standards, and I'm sure that more standards will be coming into picture. It's possible to go change the terms and conditions of these smart contracts. That talks about creation of NFTs. Now, as I said, the backbone is blockchain, which means somewhere these NFTs are being recorded, which is your ledger, the equivalent of your registration department. again, the simplest way you have to understand this is it's just a chain of blocks in the digital sense. You have your Genesis block when you first create it. You've got your block 2 and block 3, which is the series of transactions. The important point or the three features of the blockchain technology which enable all of this is open ledger. So today, again, analogy with real estate, your SRO, your sub-registrar's office will contain a volume of books which will record every transaction for every piece of property within his jurisdiction, right? And that follows the principle of open ledger, which is anybody in the public and go visit the SRO office, open the ledger and see for a piece of property what transactions have taken place. This is typically what happens when you take a home loan or you want to buy a property. You go to a lawyer, the lawyer will go check the records and see who really owns it. Is there any mortgage? Is there any bank which has attached the property? All of those details will come. It's open ledger. Anybody can see it. Second, it's a distributed ledger. Now, this is where the analogy ends. In the real estate analogy, there is this one ledger maintained by the sub-registrar's office, one piece of book that's kept there. So if somebody messes with that, then it's no way to authenticate. What happens in blockchain is this ledger, which maintains the series of transaction on a particular asset, is maintained or duplicated across multiple systems. So in a P2P network, everybody who's involved in the network, they will have copies of it. So if 1 million people have copies of it, obviously it's almost quite impossible for everybody for somebody who wants to, fudge the data, to go to everybody's computer and fudge the data. That's not going to happen. That's very unlikely to happen. And I'm told it's less than 1% chance that something like that can happen. And third is the immutable function of the blockchain, which is the hashing and the linking function. As you can see in this drawing, in block 2, so hashing is simply how the data is converted into a series of characters. We leave it at that in simple terms. You can see how in block 2 there is a reference to the previous hash, which is a reference to or the linking to the previous block. And similarly in block 3, you can see the hash is a reference to the previous block. Now the unique thing about hashing is, again, it's a matter of algorithm, I'm told. If somebody changes the data in block 2 from say Thursday to Friday, right? Somebody goes, messes with the data, hacks, changes the information on block 2 from Thursday to Friday, because if you see the data in block 2, it's Thursday. I hack, change it to Friday. The hash of block 2 will change. It will no longer be A4CE23847. It will become something else. And this is an automated process that nobody can control. The moment this happens, block 3 does not read block 2 anymore. There is no such link. The link is broken, which means every other subsequent block in that chain will refuse to recognize that change made. So what therefore it prevents is any kind of a hacking system where transactions can be modified or edited to your prejudice. So it prevents those things from happening. So the idea is, when I mint that NFT, that creation of that NFT creates the Genesis block. It contains the data, and the previous hash for the Genesis block is 0000. There's nothing before me. I just created the NFT at the Genesis block. When I sell it as a new transaction, and thereafter I sell it, there is another further transaction. So more blocks are created with each transaction, and they're all linked to the previous transaction. No, that is why, again, the analogy to real estate transaction is very similar. You take any sale deed today, your sale deed will start from the beginning. On so and so date, the municipality authority allotted the property to Mr. X. Mr. X on so and so date sold it to Ms. Y. Ms. Y thereafter built a property and then sold it to Z. You'll have that entire narration in any sale deed in real estate. That is exactly what that blockchain achieves. There is that linking function going back all the way to the genesis of that NFT. So the idea behind that blockchain is nobody can interfere with this NFT per se. This is broadly the blockchain. Now we come to the meat. Now it's important to understand all this, because when we discuss IP challenges, this becomes critical. Challenge number 1, I'm going to discuss 4 challenges. Challenge number 1, who owns what? This is the first challenge. As I said, NFT is proof of ownership of an underlying asset. Independent things. The NFT is independent of the underlying asset. So when I mint an NFT and I sell that NFT and one of you buys that NFT, what do you buy? You only buy the NFT. You do not buy the underlying asset. A loose analogy, and again, as I said, analogies are always misleading in many ways, but just think of it this way. Somebody made a movie. I bought a movie ticket. Okay. If I sell the movie ticket to you, you only own that movie ticket. You don't own the rights to the movie itself. Okay. I'm just completely loose analogy. The idea that I'm trying to make is it is distinct. In law, it is distinct. Although it may appear that ultimately what is it that you're buying? What is the value of the NFT? See, today, if somebody does a painting and makes an NFT of that painting, and I'm selling that NFT for say $10 million or $8 million or $1 billion, how can that token have that value? Obviously, it is the underlying asset that is the value, correct? That may be true. You may value the NFT based on the value of the underlying asset, but that does not mean that what you're buying and the title that you get from that transaction is to the underlying asset. It is very, very important to appreciate that. Okay, it is only because it's only authenticating the proof. Okay, of course, in principle, because as I said, it is a matter of contract law. This is the most critical aspect. Again, I emphasize it is a matter of contract law. An NFT minter, by the terms of contract, can or has the option to say that the purchase of the NFT also gives you rights to the underlying asset. He can. He has the option to. But you open any marketplace today for NFT, at least I've seen a couple during the course of my research, none of the terms and conditions will ever say that you are getting rights to the underlying asset. It will not say so. So very interesting point to keep in mind. And this is what results in further challenges that we will be discussing later. So what is sold in an NFT transaction? As I said, it is only the NFT. The owner of the underlying asset could be a completely different person. I can give you another instance because it's all contract law, just hypothetical. If I own the painting, I can give you the license to do the NFT minting. Let's say because I don't want to get into it, I'm not interested, whatever it may be, it's contract, it's my personal whims and fancies. So I give you the license or the permission to mint NFT. And I'll say that, all right, any revenues you make, give me 25%. From any revenue you make from that NFT, you make 25%. So that contract is very clear. So the underlying painting is mine. You have the right to mint the NFT, make the sales of the NFT, and whatever revenue you make, you give 25% to me. It's a classic example where the NFT owner is different from the underlying asset owner, right? So what you sell in an NFT transaction is only the NFT. The rights of the purchaser is only to that NFT. Now, here is again catch. Here is again the catch. Yes, the ownership of the underlying asset is not transferred. No doubt about it. But since the NFT represents a particular underlying asset, let us say a case of a painting. Most NFT marketplaces terms and conditions will categorically tell you, as part of the terms and conditions, that one of the rights you are acquiring as a purchaser of an NFT, say in the case of a painting, is your right to display that painting. Your right to display that painting in a certain manner. So you can have a big screen in your home and you can put up that painting on your big screen. There are apps which will allow you to do that, because that NFT will have a link to where that storage, where that art is stored. They were saying NFT is on the blockchain, the art is stored on a server. But when you tokenize it, the token will have a link to where the art is stored. So the moment you acquire that NFT, you can go to your computer or TV or whatever, which has the app for displaying the pics. And there are apps that enable you to display the underlying image. So you can display it. And obviously you have a right to further transact in the NFT. You can further sell it. Those are right. minted these. I don't think DC Comics sued these persons. I think at least a legal notice was issued. But the point that I'm trying to make is there is a realistic possibility that an NFT, not just a realistic possibility, it is happening day in and day out. People are taking images of museum photographs, paintings that are put up in museums, etc., minting them into NFTs and then selling them in the NFT marketplace for money. Now, the first question, obviously, on the face of it, doesn't look normal or legal to do it. Is that an infringement? In most likelihood, yes, it will amount to infringement. Just as an example, from the copyright space, because artwork is typically what you tend to see. If I do a painting and I'm the copyright owner of the painting, as a copyright owner, I have the exclusive right to what we call as reproduce that painting. I have the exclusive right to communicate that to the public, and so on and so forth. As I said, when you mint an NFT, you necessarily have to upload a copy of that artwork. The moment you upload a copy of that artwork, you are making a digital copy of that painting in some server. Not in the context of NFTs, but when digitalization started taking place about 10-15 years ago, there's now sufficient case law across the jurisdiction to say that reproduction of a copyrighted work need not be just a photocopy or anything. Even saving another copy on a computer, I do a Control-C, Control-V, saving a copy of an image also amounts to reproduction and infringement. So the process of minting an NFT, because it involves an uploading function, and because that uploading function necessarily involves the making or the reproduction of a copy on a server located somewhere, that will still amount to infringement. Now, what do you do? Obviously, when you have an infringement, well, you go find the persons involved and you sue them. You ask for damages, and if they've made X amount of money, then you kind of recover the money. The normal things apply. So from this perspective, if you see, in one way, it is not unique because ultimately it's a question of infringement. It happens in the past also. Somebody makes a reproduction of a great painting and pass it off as the original painter. There's fraud committed. All that you can sue, even in the old days. It is equally true in the new days. But what is the challenge here? How do you police this? Now you take the case of Wonder Woman. Yes, original artwork, but I mean, Wonder Woman's photos and images and drawings are all over the internet, and it's available on streaming media. So there are softwares which will allow you to screen grab, take out the image, do what you like. Digitalization has really helped infringers as well. Now, how do you police? There are tons of NFT platforms, and within each platform there are tons of NFT. How are you going to search? How are you going to police? Because most platforms, they simply have a basic due diligence when it comes to the user. They don't ask the users to give a bank guarantee to say that the artwork is owned by them or they have rights to the artwork. Nothing. Obviously, most platforms won't do it. Even today, you take your YouTube, you take your social media, people do infringing sales online, on Amazon, on Flipkart, whatever be the sales platform. There are infringing sales of trademark infringing sales, copyright infringing sales. It's very difficult to monitor those. But that's the function that is required for any IP owner today. The burden has increased tremendously. Can you go after the NFT platform itself? Say OpenSea. OpenSea is an NFT marketplace where you can mint an NFT and sell it. Can you go after that marketplace? Answer is probably, in very, very narrow circumstances, because under the Indian Information Technology Act, and as is also the situation with most other jurisdictions, these NFT platforms would normally fall in the category of digital intermediaries because they simply offer the platform. It's up to the users to infringe or use it legally, or use it illegally by infringing. There is, of course, a catch, which is what we call as intermediary liability. That is to say that if the NFT platform or the intermediary in question is made aware of the infringement, and the right holder has requested them to take down the infringing material, and they choose not to take it down within a reasonable time period, then that is when the intermediary can be held accountable. This is intermediary liability. There is enough case law in India and abroad. In US particularly, it's called the DMCA notice. In India also, you have a notice on the Information Technology Act. But it still leaves a lot of questions. What happens to the NFT sale after the takedown notice is before the takedown notice is issued? So somebody minted that DC Comics drawing and the NFT is sold. After that, DC Comics say writes to that NFT platform, like, please take it down. This is copyright infringement. And let's say the platform takes it down. Now, what happens to the NFT owner who's already purchased the NFT, say, for $2 million? What about his rights? Do they get invalidated? Does he get his money back? Those are all the questions that remain open, and it is still today governed by contract law. So what if the contract tells the purchaser, I'm sorry, your transaction can be held null and void, though you have a right to recover the amount that you've paid by suing in so and so jurisdiction? The contract can specify all this, and in most cases it does specify. So the purchaser is maybe left in some kind of a lurch in these types of situations. So even the purchaser is at risk. Challenge number 3. This is more of a minor challenge, which is, it's possible that you have in the past given license of your IP to a contracting party or a licensee. And typically, as you would have seen in many licensing situations, it will say that I'll give you a license to reproduce the material in all forms, existing or future. There are very broad clauses in most licensing contracts. We'll have to review and check if these types of what we call as after arising technologies, because perhaps when the contract was made, nobody thought of NFTs. Do these get covered? It's an open question, I would say. What about publicity rights of celebrity? So that's an interesting question I had to deal with recently. Say a production house makes a movie with a celebrity, say Amitabh Bachchan or anybody for that matter. A movie is made. There's a poster for the movie. Now the poster for the movie obviously is owned by the production house. And most production houses, in fact, tend to do a copyright registration on some of their posters, which are circulated in the public. Say somebody wants to mint that poster as an NFT and then sell it as an NFT. Now, who gets to do that? In simple terms, you could say, obviously, production owner, production house owns the copyright, so they can mint it as the NFT. But what about the publicity rights of the celebrity? So these are common law rights recognized in some Indian cases, but of course, foreign cases are there. What about those? Because obviously, the celebrity's name is what is catching the attention. It is what is increasing the value. Would the celebrity also have rights to get some kind of a royalty in these types of situations? Again, in my opinion, it's an open question. It needs to be litigated, but it's one of the challenges that I've come across. So challenge 4, which is all consequential to all the above things, is identifying the infringer. Anonymity, one of the greatest assets and liabilities of the digital space is anonymity. Any person can get access to that infringing material, mint the NFT, but they might have all sorts of anonymous digital names. One way to look at that is John Doe orders, as we call them in court, which is to say that you don't have to go to court to take it down by identifying who is the specific person, actual person involved behind it, behind the masked name, behind the anonymous name. Who is the person behind it is not something you need to identify. Courts have been quite willing to consider John Doe or anonymous persons and injunct them, so the relevant account holder, etc., need not be necessarily traced. In principle, however, this is still a problem, because let us say I'm the person who's violating. Let's say first I create a digital ID in the name of XYZ. Then there is an order passed by the court, and those are taken down. I can go back, create another ID called ABC. It's always possible to do that. The one way to trace this whole thing is you cannot do all these NFT transactions without a cryptocurrency wallet. And to the best of my recollection, under Indian law today, you cannot open a cryptocurrency wallet without an actual ID like a PAN card. So your PAN card is mandated to be linked to your digital wallet ID, because now it's also taxable income. So because of that, you're bound to give your PAN card. So which means it's possible today that if you find an infringer called XYZ on say an NFT marketplace, you can get a court order which will permit or direct the police to investigate and uncover who are the people, who is the person behind that particular digital ID wallet, trace that individual using that PAN card number, and bring him to justice. That is still possible, but as I said, what I've said in the slide, it requires jumping through those hoops. And let's be candid, there are likely to be too many infringers. So imagine having to jump through these hoops for each and every violator. This is exactly what happened back in the day when music was being digitalized. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, as we say, were taking the music from the tapes or CD, ripping them off into their computers, uploading them online, making it available on P2P servers. Same with movies. You can go after one, you can go after two, but if everybody starts doing it, it's almost impossible for the right holder to keep track of all this. So this is another challenge that I see. And again, this challenge, in my opinion, is not that unique. It is a challenge that arises because of the fundamental nature of the platform, which is that it is digital. So in that sense, it is not unique, but I think it's made it much more difficult to go after infringers in the NFT space. With that, I have concluded the discussion that I wanted to have today. And I hope this was something informative and productive. I look forward to questions and comments.
Thank you for the session, sir. Participants, if you have any queries, you can speak to sir. He will clarify your queries. So we are open for questions. You can either put it in the chat box or raise your hand. Accordingly, we will take the questions.
I think Vidhu says, can I talk in? I don't see any problem, I suppose.
Hello, sir. My name is Vidhu. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
It was a good, insightful session. I impressed about your knowledge about NFTs, and I'm currently also working on an NFT ticketing platform. So I actually want to know, do you think that the solution has an adaptability in place considering your background with law? Because that is a challenge that we think that this is still facing right now.
I'm sorry, Vidhu. I don't understand the question, Vidhu. Maybe
So
I didn't hear it clearly. Yeah.
So moving towards NFTs, it also involves that everyone should have a wallet, MetaMask or whatever that they're using.
Correct.
And
Digital
that,
wallet. Yes.
yes, the digital wallet, whether it's a custodian or a non-custodian wallet, non-custodian still question mark. But the question stands that the adaptability of technology, of course, it's a much more secure solution, and everything is transacted in detail. But what do you think can be the challenges in terms of law here specifically by the adoption of this technology? Because transactions, whatever that is taking place, again, till the time we are not drawing out trading in for Indian currency or whatever, the government does not know.
Yeah, see, Vidhu, this is an analogy, and it's ironic that what I'm going to tell you is what I told you about is a statement I made about 8 years ago when it came to social media in another conference I'd given it in Bangalore. See, technology is like an F1 car. Okay, it zooms, and law is like a 6-month-old crawling baby. Now, if you say yes, at some point, perhaps at t is equal to infinity, that crawling baby will catch up to that zooming technology. But by the time the baby reaches t is equal to 1, the F1 car has gone to t is equal to 10.
Right.
It cannot be helped. You see, it is the nature of governance. It is the nature of law, which is why, it's, again, not to go into too much legal theory. Indian law, or in fact, global law, all laws of the world have a concept of interpretation, which is called contemporaneous interpretation, right? Which is to say that an old law, a judge will try to interpret as best as possible to fit the current modalities. So one of the most famous cases in India to deal with this was the Contract Act. So the Indian Contract Act is 1872. So the concept of giving an offer for a contract and the acceptance of the offer to form a contract were all created in that 1872 legislation on the basis of postal. Somebody sitting in Chennai will give a proposal in writing, send it by post. It'll take 1 week to reach, say, Calcutta. From there, somebody will say, oh, this term is not acceptable, therefore I'm making this change. So he gives a counter offer and he sends a post again back to Chennai. So this was the assumption, and there are provisions in the Contract Act to deal with these types of situations. And then suddenly came fax, which is instantaneous communication, right? So the court had to, interpret that provision from 1872, and where fax was never even thought of, and then apply it in a factual situation where communication was by fax. Ultimately, the court did it. It's not like the court is not going to say, oh, I'm so sorry, technology has developed, I cannot decide the rights and obligations between parties, tata, bye-bye. Whatever it is, the court has to decide the dispute. So they did it. And now that same principle is now extended to email communications. So what I've seen is that as much as possible, courts and advocates try to push it, but there are going to be gaps. You see, for 3 years now, we've been fighting over cryptocurrency regulation. More than 3, in fact. I've been seeing this fight in Supreme Court for almost 4 years now. But it's far away because people find it difficult to understand how to regulate. Some countries have banned it, others want to regulate it. So it's going to be a tough call.
Right.
I know it's not much of an answer, but there's no answer really to give other than the fact that, we'll try to find solution as and when cases come up.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is true.
I think then Meha Shah has asked a question. When government is not taking responsibility, then why such things are promoted? Well, good question. I don't have an answer to that, which is why the call today is, whatever is the decision, you're going to ban it. You're going to regulate, put some, regulatory steps, whatever, put it. But take a call, take a decision as quickly as possible is what, the market is demanding. Let us see what the government comes up with. Harita, if you get a session on cryptocurrency, okay, that is more for INSEAD and CII. All right, thank you, Notes. I'm happy that it was a wonderful presentation. Please, any questions, please?
Hi, Adarsh. I am Aman. I have one question with regards to the assignment of copyright issues. So, in the Copyright Act in Section 18, the assignment provision, there is that proviso that no such assignment shall be in a mode which is not in commercial use at the time. So now, if suppose someone is assigning their copyright, say in such a language that in all digital means, for all digital means. So will that include in an NFT context also, considering now?
I think so. As I said, the act of minting an NFT necessarily involves reproduction of the copyrighted material, because you are creating a copy of that digital of that work on some server somewhere. So the moment you do that minting and then you start doing sale transactions, that would amount to commercialization. I would think so. Yes.
So now we will have to assume that NFTs are a medium in commercial use.
Yes, I would think so. I think there's a sound argument to be made to say that it is commercial use. Yes.
Okay. And my second question is with regards to the taxability of these artworks. So these will also be considered as digital assets for which you have to pay.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
believe
Thank
so. But to be very honest, I have not really seen the fine print of that Finance Act. Now that you
Okay.
mentioned it, I'll go take a look again on and see how they've actually defined it.
Yeah.
I've not seen it in careful print. So let me go check that up. But I think my first impression based on my recollection is yes, I think it would cover.
Okay then. Thank
I
you.
think Karthik, welcome. Karthik had raised a hand.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. It was brainstorming a discussion. My question is that, sir, if an author sells his artwork in one platform and he can sell the same artwork in another platform, whether it's become an illegal or legal, sir?
Technically, there's nothing illegal about it because I'm the owner. I minted 2 NFTs of the same artwork.
Yes.
One is question whether the platform will permit you to do it. Now, what you're saying is somebody takes or exploits the fact that there are 2 different platforms. I go to platform 1, mint it on platform. I go to platform 2, mint it on platform 2, right? Per se, nothing illegal. Depends on the terms and conditions of the NFT marketplace. But frankly, it dilutes the value of the NFT. So whoever is doing that is shooting themselves in their own foot. See, the main reason why NFTs are being sold at a very high price is the principle of scarcity. I don't know, as kids, I'm sure you have it. I still have a piece of paper with Kapil Dev's autograph. Okay, when I had a chance to meet him as a young boy, I took Kapil Dev's autograph. Now, theoretically,
You don't want to sell that as NFT.
No, I don't want to sell it. I'm not interested yet. I'm reasonably commercially settled as a lawyer, so I don't want to make side money like this. No, but the point I was coming to is, even how many pieces of paper are there today with Kapil Dev's signature? Maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000. It's like a limited edition document or a limited edition product. So scarcity is a key component of NFT value. The more rare, the more scarce it is, the higher the value of that NFT. That's how the prices are jacked up. So if you end up duplicating it on multiple platforms, you are diluting the value yourself. So I don't think it will be commercially viable to do what you're suggesting, but I currently don't see anything which will make it illegal, so long as you're owner of the copyright. Now, if you're not owner of the copyright, in any case, even the first NFT minting is illegal. So forget the second NFT minting anyway. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. And Harita has made that comment. Depends on the TNC he made on the first sale. If he had sold the complete rights on platform one, then buyer can soon. That is also equally correct. But the problem that I have is, again, I'll have to go revisit the terms and conditions in most of these platforms. We'll have to check if the terms and conditions actually address this, which will specifically say that I will not mint another NFT for the same underlying artwork or underlying. It's an interesting question. So thanks for that, Harita. Let me go check that up. I have to verify that. If what Harita says is correct, and there is a term in the terms and conditions of platform 1, which categorically states that this is exclusive, that this NFT minting is exclusive and cannot be redone on another platform, then it would be a breach of contract. So it is illegal to that extent. It would be a breach of contract and buyer 1 can go after you. Yes, possible. Aman Sinha has again raised his hand, I believe.
I was just thinking, just recollecting that in the lecture you had mentioned that if when we acquire an NFT, we are not essentially acquiring the artwork, but just the token.
Correct.
So in that case, essentially, even if so effectively you cannot be doing assignment of copyright itself because you don't have the artwork.
You're right. I mean, but what I meant to say, that's true. What I'm saying is what the current default position is. But in principle, you can create an NFT and your contract can say, your terms and conditions can say that purchase of the NFT also amounts to assignment of copyright. Nothing stops you from doing so.
Okay.
Because it's all governed by contract law, no?
Yeah,
And contract law is whatever you decide.
true.
But
So,
today, most of them don't do that.
okay. So yeah,
Because at least
basically,
the general platforms, the open market platforms don't do that. In principle, you can open your own platform. You can have your own platform for your own collection. And in the terms and conditions, you can very happily say that yes, purchase of the NFT amounts to assignment of the copyright. You're more than welcome to do so.
okay. But in a normal situation, say you have acquired an NFT, right? And
Yeah.
if someone else is also showcasing the NFT that you have acquired, let's see, this seems to be like a nice idea, a nice design, and they suppose make something in out of it and put it in their homes or whatever. So we
Yeah.
cannot really sue for copyright infringement considering
No.
we don't have the copyright itself.
Correct. If the NFT owner is simply an acquirer without rights to the underlying asset, the reproduction or the display or the communication by some random third party of the same underlying artwork, he does not get any copyright statutory right to go after them.
Okay, so but we can go after him for what? Theft.
No, but what will you go after him for? Theft. Suppose, see, this is the problem of the scarcity I was saying. Because if photos, if like a basketball card signed by Michael Jordan, you have a basketball card that is signed by Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
and say 10 copies of that are already uploaded online by somebody.
Mm.
How can you stop him? See, you might have an authentic version, but say he went to some other website, that some other website made it available for him to download, and so he downloaded it and he's put it in his computer. Now he didn't really infringe or he didn't really steal it from you. Somebody else stole it, put it up online in some other server, and he happened to download it. So that is where the concept of thefts, etc., really break down. And which is why NFT values are of such a nature that if if what you're bought as an NFT is so is so available easily from the public, then what is the point of the NFT value?
So a lot of interesting situations arise in dealing with these NFTs.
Yeah. It's a big question mark. So I mean, I personally have a lot of question marks on how these NFTs are valued, but then that's not my domain, which is one of the reasons why I completely stay away from acquiring any NFTs. Okay, the next question is from Mohammed Mazoom. Sir, how can you evaluate the authenticity of NFTs? It's not similar as in the case of tangible things. No, so the only way that is to say, are you asking Mohammed, how can you verify whether the NFT minter is the owner of the underlying work? Is that your question, Mohammed? If that is your question, yes, then there is a problem. There is a problem because it is not easy to do so unless you know of the person, etc. It's very difficult to authenticate that the NFT owner is the owner of the underlying artwork. What you can authenticate on blockchain is if the person who is selling, the NFT is the fellow who originally, is there a trace to the original NFT minter? So that can be done. I think Harita shared some link. I don't know what that link is. Harita, perhaps you can indicate what is the purpose of that link? Which question? Oh, you mean the previous question? It's about innocent infringement. You're talking about the NFT being minted on 2 separate platforms. Okay. Or you're talking about the authenticity.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible. Please tell me.
You were explaining him about that one person can download it without the knowledge of that he is committing an infringement, right? So that article is about that.
Oh, right. Innocent infringement.
For IPR, these are the remedies. Whatever I answered about the platform and platform 2 also, it was in relevance with copyright infringements.
Yeah, theoretically, that innocent infringement, as far as India is concerned, right? India does not, deal with this in so much great detail, except there is a provision which specifically says that if you had no reasonable basis Now, the issue in those types of cases also, in my view, is you can still get that copy. Let us assume, there is an innocent infringement that happened. You genuinely believed it. I think a court is still entitled to give injunctions. Perhaps damages is what will go out of the equation.
Yes, sir. The same is given in the article also, sir. Whatever you
Okay.
explain now is given in the article also.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, there's similar provisions there in most IP legislation. I know it's there in the Patents Act also. Innocent infringement, then you're only entitled to injunction. All right. Anything else? I think we are at 5:10. So back to the hosts. Now we want to close it. Anybody? ICERD India Analytics.
So thank you, sir,
Yeah.
for sharing your views regarding NFT and IP. So there are no questions, so we can end the session.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting, and thank you all for taking the time, and thank you for making it a some good discussion that we've had post the lecture. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Have a good evening and have a good weekend.